Hello, everybody. Welcome to Qobuz Live. We sure had an incredible Qobuz Live yesterday. I don't know if you caught it, but we had the John Coltrane panel on. That was absolutely fascinating. Every single word. These things usually last about an hour. This one went about an hour and a half, and it was absolutely fascinating. We've got this on Qobuz Social or Streaming Music Matters as usual. If you didn't get a chance to check it out, this is it was a lesson in history. It was a lesson in philosophy. It was just an absolute the best one that has ever happened with us, and so we were really pleased and honored to be able to host this on Qobuz Live. Today we've got a really neat show too. We've got hi Leonard, how are you doing? Today we've got a good friend of mine that I've known a few years, and he's turned into I don't know. Audio hero, so to speak. He's a very smart man. His name is Russ Hamm, and he owns a company called Sonic Presence. It's a microphone company. You might think, well, that's a little unusual for Qobuz to be doing microphones, but if you've been tuning into the show, it's not always about Qobuz or exactly Qobuz, but it's stuff that I always want music lovers to have the best gear they can possibly have to either reproduce music, and in this case, to actually produce music or live streams or video conferencing. I'm gonna bring these guys on in just a minute, but again, welcome to Qobuz. Let me tell you a little bit about us. We've got over 60 million tracks. They're all at least full resolution. When I say full resolution, I mean at least 1644 that you would have gotten off of a CD. But so many of our tracks and albums are actually coming in high resolution, which is really what we specialize in. We want to be able to have the very best sound that you could have, period, and you can get all this at pretty inexpensive prices. We've got our first tier is $15, and that gets you everything that Qobuz streams in full resolution or high resolution. It'll come down to about $12.50 if you pay it annually. And we just opened up a family plan too that'll give you six family members for $25. So you get the people in your family that are maybe listening to a lesser service, get them turned on to Qobuz, because I mean, if you guys all go in, if there's like six members, I think it's like less than $5 a piece or something like that. So it's really inexpensive to get as much high resolution audio is out there. Almost everything that we're getting these days is coming in high resolution, at least 24 bits, which I don't know if you know my philosophy, but I love the word length. That's to me the real key here. So yeah, we've got a lot of stuff going on at Qobuz, and without further ado, I'd like to bring on our guest Russ Hamm.
Hi, David.
Hello, Russ. How are you doing, buddy?
Greetings from New York City.
It's always good to see you. How are things going in the microphone business?
Well, David, it all starts with the microphone. You have to have the microphone before you can have the speaker or the headphone, right? So it all starts with the microphone.
Yeah, and there aren't
And
many people that know much more about that. I should have probably asked you, Russ. That's a fairly obvious statement, but what do you know about microphones? I mean, what's your history? Could you tell us a little bit, just sort of bring us up to speed on who you are and why you would know this?
well, the microphone came about in the late 1800s, but I wasn't around then. I came into the picture a little while after that, but the 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 original carbon microphone was developed by Edison, and they used it in the Bell telephone because Bell wasn't very successful making a microphone. So when they Edison suggested that they use the carbon button microphone, it was huge improvement. And of course, in those days, they didn't have amplifiers, so the carbon made a very high level signal that went down the wires to the receiver at the other end. But okay, why am I mentioning carbon microphone? Well, because believe it or not, those carbon microphones were used up until the 1940s, maybe even the 1950s, and it was. There are a lot of development going on for higher quality microphones with wider bandwidth and so on. Certainly here in the U.S., it was Western Electric developing the condenser microphone, if you will, and similarly in Germany, there was a lot of work going on, and the Neumann company came about in the 1930s with the bottle microphone that was used for broadcasting. So I got involved with the Neumann company in about 1977. When I became part of Gotham Audio. We were the North American distributor, representative, we were, for Neumann microphones, and we were for quite some time until around when Neumann was absorbed into Sennheiser. So I have a long history of working on microphones, both in doing development work as well as, of course, the sales and what have you. And then after the Neumann microphones became distributed by Sennheiser, I went back to Germany, what used to be East Germany, but which in 1989 was unification, and the original Neumann factory, which was in Gefell, as I said, in East Germany. That's near Leipzig, by the way, and it's also just a few miles away from the Wagner Bayreuth Opera House, and the Gewandhaus Orchestra and what have you. So I sat down with the Microtech people, and of course the entire economy of the East had collapsed at that point. So we made a deal to bring their microphones to the West, and we set up distribution here in North America and what have you. And they're still quite successful today, the Microtech Gefell microphones. So at that point, I decided to go into the telecom business, and though I didn't have much involvement with the audio world for about 15 years. And then in 2015, I happened to be walking through Madison Square Park, and there was this young man playing the piano in the middle of the park. I'm not talking about an electric piano, he's playing an acoustic piano in the middle of the park. And it was pretty good. So, the first thing you have to do is walk up and say, how did you get the piano into the middle of the park? I mean, it's like, this is an acoustic piano we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, these things don't weigh a couple of pounds.
Yeah. So I said, well, I've got a GoPro camera. Do you mind if I make a video of you playing or what have you? What was so interesting about it was that he was playing pop music, but in the style of stride piano. Now, this is really unusual. If you ever heard the Rolling Stones or the Grateful Dead played in a stride piano. It's it's quite something. So he said, "Yeah, okay, you can record and whatever." Okay, so I did. But the sound, of course, was horrible. The picture of the GoPro was great, but the sound was horrible. So I thought, you know, maybe using some of what we learned in the past 50 years, we might be able to fix this sound. Interestingly enough, I got a hold of a fellow that I knew who was on the board of GoPro and said, "Hey, would you be interested in cooperating?" Their response was, "Sound is not a priority." So, maybe they should talk to some great motion picture directors, uh, George Lucas and what have you, who will tell them that sound is 50% of the deal, right? The other 50% being the picture. But anyway, we decided to play around with uh, small microphones that we could use unobtrusively in the field or in a concert hall or what have you to record realistic three-dimensional sound. And they had to be easy to use.
Now, hold it
As
okay,
it,
before this, Russ, if I can just interrupt you a second. You had actually had engineering, recording engineering experience prior to this, right? And
that,
actually had worked on what the original SSL. Is that correct?
oh, before that.
Okay, yeah.
SSL wasn't even developed when I started doing this. So.
Right, right. But
SSL was a
you've got
monitor.
a lot of, even prior to this, you had already had a lot of experience in the studio, and then also subsequently with microphones in general.
Yes. So my first was released in 1964, and we recorded that in a radio station actually, mono, and it was it was actually a pop record. So in order to do that, in those days, you would record the basic drum, bass, and guitar in mono, and then you would overdub whatever other instruments, percussion, tambourine, what have you, and then you would overdub again uh, to do the vocal, and then if there was chorus, you'd overdub again. So each one of those overdubs was a generation. So you would go mono to mono, which would go down a generation. Then the next one, the next one, the next one. We could go about four generations and what have you. Um, and that's one my first exposure to actually using microphones in the studio. So going back to what I said earlier, um, these new ones that we wanted to develop had to be easy to use, because I can tell you that using microphones in the conventional method in a studio is something of an art, and
Right.
it's not easy to learn. Okay, so very few people can use a typical that microphone that's David, that one that's on your left there that I can see in the picture, conventional type of microphone. Um, for your voice, maybe that's a pretty good setup that you've got there. Okay, but let's take that out into the studio and try and record an acoustic guitar,
Right.
try and record a piano, try and record drums, what have you, and you will find out that typically you can't do it with one microphone. You'll need multiple microphones. And once you start playing with multiple microphones, this becomes a multi-dimensional acoustic problem. And of course, that's what recording engineers get paid to do in the studio, is to set up those microphones. And sometimes the setup is endless. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on to get what you hear. Well, you were talking about uh, what was it yesterday? Dizzy Gillespie? Oh.
John Coltrane.
So John Coltrane. Okay, so in order to do those records, That's multiple microphones, and it takes a lot of work to set that up
Right.
in the studio and so on. Okay, so as far as so you learn this. It takes years to learn this, and of course, I said we started with mono, and then then I got a offer from Bob Fine to come to New York. At that time, he was probably one of the most famous engineers in the world, responsible for the Mercury Living Presence
Oh
stereo
yeah.
recordings
Oh
and what
yeah.
have
Those
you.
are. I've got a whole collection of those that I bought over the years. They were remarkable recordings.
Yeah, and so and his wife was the producer of those recordings.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really.
Yeah, and I knew them quite well. Well, first, he offered me a job, so his studio, Fine Recording on 57th Street, was actually it was an old hotel, and the main studio was a ballroom. We had chandeliers and a dance floor,
Uh
wooden
huh.
dance floor, and lots of plaster, ornate carved plaster and whatever. So acoustically, it was a fantastic room. Uh, uh, the Mercury stuff was all done on location with a remote truck, but the command records, uh, the early ones like Persuasive Percussion and what have you, were all done in that Studio A at Fine Recording with what I would call a small orchestra, 20, 30 piece orchestra. They were all done in that room with live situation. And this was way before the SSL console. And those recordings were done primarily to 3-track, which was the medium in those days. So you had a left track, a right track, and a vocal track or a center track that would then be split when you did the stereo master. That's then so I joined up with the Find Recording, and at that time, which was about what 68, I guess, yeah, 1968. Guess what? Multi-track recording comes along, and first we had 4 tracks, and this was quite a luxury because we could now record, 4 different groups, if you will, and there was no magnetic degradation because there was no overdubbing. So
Right.
there were actual separate tracks that we could record on. And you would think, oh, 4 microphones, one, two, three, four. It wasn't that way. Typically, there were 4 mono tracks. And if you think about the recording in the late 1960s, a pop recording, everything is mono. So even the Frank Sinatra records are mono, although now they're available in stereo because
Sure.
most of those were done 3-track. But so we had 4-track, and the Beatles stuff was all 4-track or whatever. And then quickly, 8-track showed up. Tommy Dowd over at Atlantic was one of the first ones to use 8-track, and then the problem became, okay, we got 8-track. How do we monitor 8 tracks? There were studios in New York City that I went to that used 8 speakers, if you can imagine this. Okay, maybe four above and 4 below, but that wasn't a very good way of doing it. Eventually, people figured out, well, you need to listen on 1 speaker if it's mono, or 2 speakers if it's stereo, and so that's where the monitor mixing came along, and that, by the way, gave birth to the SSL console because you had a separate monitor facility. You had faders that did the recording, and you had faders that did the monitoring, and that whole thing evolved into the SSL console, and also the Harrison console, which came out of Nashville. Um, so Where are we going now? Let me see.
So, at any
Oh,
rate, where I was really going with that, Russ, is that I wanted to establish that you're not just some, some guy that's got a garage with a soldering iron, and you kind of decided that, this would be a cool thing. You got tons of experience, decades of experience in the recording and the microphone side of things, and I just want to let's kind of get into this because we could do this, you and I, we could do this for like hours because I love hearing your stories, but I really do kind of want to get into what we're talking about. We're really in fact, I think what I'm going to do is we're going to bring the other guys on because I really want to tell you what my experience was with them to begin with. And as you know, I've been kind of a huge fan of this technology since the very first time that I heard them. We met not long after that. But I want to bring your two more people that work with you on onto screen. The first one I'd like to bring on is your partner, Chris Van Deusen. How are you doing, Chris? Oh, I think you're on mute, buddy.
yeah.
I'm doing great, David. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Chris. I
Beautiful.
met not long after I met Russ, and
Hmm.
he is Russ's partner and does all the marketing for these guys as well as just uh, yeah product development, and he's just a huge part of the company. It's been great getting to know him. He's a great guy. And then the next fellow that came on board was Mike Dvorak, and another brilliant young man, recording engineer, and really, really heavy into what Russ is doing, sort of the way that I got into it, because I'm not easily impressed. Um, I mean, I'm just not. I mean, I've seen it all. This long in the industry, you go, what's
Hey, Joe.
new, and yeah, okay, there's a new pair of speakers, there's a new amp or something. Well, a friend of mine said, "Hey, I've got a friend in New York that just developed these new microphones, and I'd like you to hear what they sound like." So this was like so cheesy. I was just going along just to be a nice guy, right? So he gives me his cell phone, right? He hooks up a pair of like cheap Sony headphones to him. These are $80 headphones. They're the Sony Pro 70s. They're the ones you see in studios all the time, right? They're okay. They're not great. Um, and so we hook this thing up to him. He hits play on this thing, and it's not music. It's environment. But all of a sudden, there's a helicopter that's recorded that's coming from behind me, and it's doing one of these numbers. I immediately jerked the headphones off. I don't know what the heck I was doing. We were inside, but I jerked the headphones off and looked around, and I'm going, oh my God, I've never heard anything like that. It sounded like the helicopter was coming down on me. And then I'm looking at the screen, and all of a sudden I see the helicopter kind of come up and then circle around me this way. And I'm going, I've never heard anything like this in my whole life. And so I immediately jerked the headphones off, and this guy's trying to open up some kind of tube factory or something, and he's going, well, I'll have to put 3 million into this thing and 3 million into the next thing, and then of course we'll have to get this thing, and it's going to cost another 10 million. I'm going, why don't you just do these? This is like a gabillion dollar. This is a gabillion dollar project just by itself. And I don't know if that he ever
Hmm.
took it seriously, but then I met Russ not long after that, and Russ set me down, and we had a what I like to call an Einstein experience. We were talking about head related transfer functions. He was telling me about these headphones and how he got them to work, and I was just totally, absolutely blown away. And I know that Mike, you had kind of a similar experience with this, right?
I did, yeah. Well, and I first want to say I was listening to Qobuz all morning, I do have to say. So thanks for having us on the show, David. We love what you guys are doing.
Oh, we
But,
got our friend Joe on here. Joe,
hey, Joe, how
we
are
got.
Oh
you?
I
yeah.
told Joe about these microphones, and he got a set and is flipped out over them. He's actually doing speaker He's literally recording a pair of speakers and then another pair of speakers. I just watched this video last night, and A-Being them, and you can hear what the speakers are doing on these microphones. They're incredible. I didn't mean to interrupt, but tell me about your experience.
I'm very similar from you, David. I went to SUNY Purchase, the State University of New York, for audio engineering. And while I was up there and at school, I got to play with so many expensive microphones, and I was surrounded by kids who just were obsessed with the price tag, right? If something's expensive, it has to be good. And if something's big, it has to be good. And if it's old, it has to be good. So I met these guys at the AES convention at the Javits Center in New York, I believe in 2018, about October. And, there was nothing flashy about the microphone, so I didn't understand it at first. But, I put the headphones on. I think Chris looks like a nice guy. He told me to put on the headphones and take a listen to it.
Yeah, funnily, I thought you were, I don't know, I was a little skeptical about you. 'Cause you were, I don't know, you intimidated me a little, but
as soon as, which I think they had the experience all day long of people put on the headphones, and I thought a woman was talking behind me. So you take the headphones off and you put it back on. And, oh, wait a second, the recording that Sonic Presence makes, it pulls a listener into a completely new world. And it's wherever the video is taken or the audio is taken, I mean, you're just there. And so I think I took the headphones off. I listened probably for 10 seconds. I was a little more maybe cocky back then. I don't know. And I said, yeah, okay, but what plugins are on this? What processing is being done? The trick. Yeah, I know. It's all this 3D rendering. You guys probably have all these budgets and are using all this software. And, oh, the Amazon Prime truck has arrived outside. And so, I just couldn't believe it. I really could not believe it. And until I went to the office, and I saw how the sausage was made, and really had a pair and went and made some recordings for myself. I mean, that's when you believe it. Is wow, that this is all you need, really.
I've been a sound man all my life, and I've never heard anyone, no amateur, able to record as high a quality as these things record. But this is also abstract. We're having a super abstract discussion here. So what I'd like you, if you're here with us today, write down sonicpresence.com, or either just go to YouTube and just type in Sonic Presence. Get yourself a set of headphones. They don't have to be crazy headphones. You don't want to use the Apple earbuds because they just suck. I mean, not the ones that hang, right? But even like in 320, you can hear what these things do. And when you put on an ordinary set of headphones, they've got a lot of nature recorded there and a lot of city recorded there. And what you'll note is that you'll see the image and you'll hear everything as it's playing the way you would hear it if you were there. It's absolutely uncanny, and we'll get into the technology in just a little bit. But Chris, how did you guys get together? Chris is an awesome musician, got a great band, and we've heard some of his recordings. In fact, there's some recordings of your band on YouTube, right?
Yeah, there are. Got some echo here. Can we fix that? All right, anyway, yeah, the name of the band is Animal Reporters, and I sort of met Russ out of the piano player he was mentioning earlier in the park. His name's Johnny Marks. Him and I ended up starting a band later on, and that's how Russ and I eventually got to know each other. But yeah, we perform all around the city, and being more of a visual-centric person, I studied cinematography and documentary filmmaking in college. They don't teach you anything about how to record audio for video. That's like a whole separate audio engineering major. So I was lost when it came to audio. But what I loved about the SP15 was I could just plug it into my phone and record my band without, having multiple mics and figuring out how to mic a drum kit. So it just streamlined the whole process. And I
You
can
and
even
I
bring
had this
them.
conversation. That's a
Yeah,
keep going. I'm sorry.
because
Yeah.
you've recorded drums as
Well,
well
when we
with
first
the
got
SP15.
together, I don't know if you remember this. I do like it was yesterday. Um, we're talking about this, and I'm going, Russ. I mean, I recorded. This was maybe the second time that we had met because Russ had sent me a set of these headphones. Because I'm going, they sound great, but I'm a loud guy. I'm a drummer, and he goes, no problem. These things will take like 130 dB, and I'm going, the problem with trying to record drums is you gotta, and I've done it my whole life. You put a SM57 on the bass, you put the I mean on the snare and the hi hat. You get all the different microphones that you use, a couple maybe condensers up here. You run it through a mixing board, then that goes through the. I mean, this is not something that you lightly go into. And so what I did, I know it wasn't right, but I went to Amazon and I bought one of these little guys. I don't know if you can see it. Everything's so dark. It's
Yep.
just a little
Yep.
dummy. It's just a little. It's a wig head. It's what it is. And I mounted a pair of the SP15s on where the ears go, right before the ears. I mounted this on a
There you
little
go.
a tripod, and I am recording myself. Not I was testing them out, so I was slamming the crud out of these drums, and there was nothing that I could do to overdrive these headphones. It was unbelievable. But when I hit just a tiny, delicate cymbal, just very lightly, everything was exactly like I heard it. So this is what was appealing to me as a musician, is that musicians spend a lot of money, or they wish they could spend a lot of money on this big mic setup, that if you have a pair of these, then you could still do that, but it sure does present itself as a wonderful tool for recording, don't you think?
Absolutely. And yeah,
And
go ahead.
as a drummer, David, and as an engineer, we know that the most difficult part of recording a drum set and recording, with so many microphones, is the phase
Right.
relationship. As soon as you get a couple microphones up in a room, they're all interacting, and we do what we can. We measure, we get out the tape measure and we measure the overheads, and maybe you get some string, and everyone has their own way of doing it. With how we record with the SP15 microphones, you don't have to worry about the phase relationship. The distance is exactly the same, actually, basically on every person between where we're recording, right in front of the ears. So when you listen back on headphones, that phase relationship with the drum set is just absolutely bang on. Right from where it was recorded to right where it's playback. So all of the phase relationships are preserved, so you don't get any strange overlapping out of phase kick drums or snare drums or anything like that. That's why it's so great at a live concert too. You don't have to worry about the phase interaction of the speakers and anything like that.
Or as Joe did, which is even sometimes more, it's harder than this, because you're going to get some forgiveness since you're so far away from the stage, you're not right there. Well, Joe from Joe and Tell and the Hi-Fi Summit, this guy did a couple pair of speakers, and they were in perfect phase relationship with each other, because they were being recorded exactly like you heard it. I'd like to maybe kind of go into a little bit of the technology right now, if that's okay with you guys. One of the things I wanted to do before, because Russ and I had talked about this, Russ, Mike, and Chris and I had talked about this, and so before we go for anything else, I'd just like to do a little demo for you. As you can see, I've got a pretty good setup here. I mean, it was expensive. I've got a PreSonus XLR to USB box that goes into a USB D to A converter, and then to an amplifier, and then through my system. So, I mean, this would be what you would call a professional setup. However, before we started our live stream today, I put on a pair of SP15s. So I've got a pair of SP15s. That's actually what we're listening to right now. That's what I'm talking to. But I'm going to do a little demo between the SP15s because these things have, it turns out, they're awesome for live streaming and zooming. If you're a teacher, please don't use those little Apple ear pod. They sound horrible. In fact, Russ has got a set. I'm going to let him switch in a little bit and do a little AB there. But I'm going to do my AB now. So I am right now currently on the VR15 headphones. You can kind of hear them, right? So I'm that's what you're hearing me through right now. I'm about to switch to my super expensive microphone while I'm talking. I'm going checking 1 2 3, checking 1 2 3, so you guys can all hear. I'm still on the 15. I'm about to switch to the audio right now. Microphone, and now I'm on the other microphone. I don't know if you can detect the difference there, but okay, this is a super expensive setup. This is back to the VR15 now, and I've gone from maybe $500 to $149. What did you guys think? Could you guys? I'm not. I can't really interact with the people that are out on the live stream with us. But what did you guys think about the difference there? Russ and Chris.
Oh, well, Chris, I can't use my usual language to describe the difference.
To me, it sounds. We've heard you in person, David, and the SP15 sounds like you sound in real life.
Yeah.
The other microphone sounds sort of like a traditional sort of radio, listening over radio, DJ mic.
That's why I bought it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and plus it looks really cool. But now I can take this big old honking thing and I could just move it out of the way. Now I've got some room. Now I can breathe, right?
There you go.
It's like, so we're talking about these microphones being very good for musicians and recording nature. But I got to tell you, if you're doing live streaming or you're on conference calls with your boss and the board, don't use the little Apple things. You might think they look cool, but that's where it stops. They sound horrible. So at any rate, I just wanted to let you know because that's what I'm using here. And I got to tell you, I was pretty amazed when I swapped off from my big rig to these guys and am able to get this kind of sound quality. So kudos, Russ. This is not a small thing. This is absolutely huge. So what we'd like to do now is bring up a few pictures that we've got from you guys, and Russ and Mike and Chris. You guys can all maybe just sort of go through these pictures and tell us a little more about the company, a little bit more about how you wear these things, a little bit about where you may be going in the future. But right now, I think if I'm not mistaken, the SP15 just became available like 10 minutes ago, right?
Yeah.
You can see some of the inventory. Right
yeah.
Ready
Cool.
to ship.
But they literally, it hasn't been very long at all, right?
We launched this summer. This is a 2020 product.
2020 product, great. A 2020 product made from made right here and from, like I say, one of my absolute audio heroes. Neetha, can you bring up the first picture, please? So yeah, we've got Sonic Presence. This is their logo, really cool logo, and their logo actually means something. Can you tell us a little bit about just what you get? I'm guessing 360, is that right?
Yeah, it's sort of the 360. There's a little motion to the logo. There's 4 rings separately if you look closely. Those can be left, right, front, back, or up, down, left, right, whatever,
Here's the
whatever you
thing
need
that
to
I
term it.
that this speaks to me, because this is how I describe the microphones to people that don't know what I'm talking about. I'm saying I can have a pair of these on. There can be a bird chirping 30 meters to my right at 45 degrees, and I'm a human being, right? I know where that is. If I'm outside, I know where that bird is. I don't have to have eyes that's going, oh, he's right there, because I can hear it. All of the reflections off the back of my head into my ears, it gives us all cues. These are these are millions of year old senses that we've developed, and it was mostly due to survival. But we know where things are coming from. That's how I describe these things. I don't. It doesn't matter what is where. That's the way the microphones present themselves. Neither, can you go to the next one? Great. This is a picture, and this may take a little bit of time because the binaural recording has gotten a lot of press over the last 100 years. There's been a lot of study around head-related transfer function, HRTF, and this was some of my first discussions with Russ. I'm going, Russ. I mean, dude, these things sound fantastic. Have you ever heard the Neumann binaural uh, headset? And he's going, well, of course I had. Let me tell you what's wrong with it. So Russ, and then what he said to me really came true. So Russ, could you give us just as quick as you can a little history on binaural, and then the sonic presence, the way that you guys are doing it, and how it
Sure,
differs.
sure. So you're looking at a Neumann KU100. This is let's see. This is either the third or the fourth generation of binaural head. And in this particular case, you don't see the microphones because they're actually inside the head, and they're the ear canal, um, which you can see the ears there. So the ear canal goes down through a tube, and where the microphones are actually located. So the idea is to make a perfect scale model of the ears pickup system, and locate the microphone capsule where the ears membrane actually is.
Which really makes sense if you think about this on the surface. That makes a lot of sense because we're humans. This is sort of how we're built anyway, right? And that's how everybody's buying into this.
Yeah. Well, okay. So if I go back to the 1980s, I guess, when the first one of these things was developed, KU 1980. So I tried to use one of these in a studio to make a recording. We tried doing it with a pop music group. We tried doing it with acoustic guitar and singer. I think we tried string quartet and what have you. You can hear a lot of these recordings on YouTube, made with these dummy heads. And now I'm going to tell you what's wrong. When you first listen to them, they sound like it's a surround sound recording. However, after you listen for a little bit, and I tell you what to listen for, you'll find out that there's nothing in front of you. Everything is either on the left side or the right side, somewhere, but nothing is in front of you.
When you say in front of you, Russ, you're really talking about literally right in front of you. Like typically when you have a good pair of stereo speakers, and you have say a female vocal, her vocal will sound, and it should sound like it's coming right in front of you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But that doesn't happen with binaural.
So with this binaural dummy head, that voice it's somewhere, but it's not in front of you. And it becomes a real problem in pop music because the vocalist that you just mentioned is supposed to be right in front of you, center. Okay, maybe there's some records where they pan it off to the left or
Yeah,
the right,
but essentially in front of you.
basically it's supposed to be in front of you. If you hear a string quartet recording with this head, and again, there are a number of those on YouTube that you can listen to, good recordings, okay? But what you'll find is that, yes, there are four instruments. Um, Two of them are on the left, maybe to the left rear and to the left a little bit in front of that, and the other one is over on the right, right front and right rear. But when you actually go to a concert and there's a string quartet, there's two instruments that are in front of you and one to the left and one to the right. Typically, that's the setup, right? So you would expect that the string quartet is going to be four musicians playing in front of you. But when you hear it in binaural, you'll listen to it and you'll notice that there's two on the left and two on the right. So the center image is a real problem.
The cool
And
thing
it's
about binaural, though, really, to give it its due, it does this really cool effect. You get stuff, or you do get stuff, here where you wouldn't on an ordinary stereo recording.
yes, and we're going to talk about what that is in a
Okay,
minute.
we'll do that in a little
Okay,
bit, Russ.
yeah, we're going to talk about what that is. But
So
like I say,
instead of
the
varying, I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, the most obvious thing, and Chris can chime in here, is that when I first played Chris a binaural recording, okay, it's impressive, it sounds good and whatever, but Chris, do you notice there's nothing in the center? And what did you notice?
Yeah, as soon as Russ pointed that out, it was just this giant hole in the middle. Um, it just didn't sound right, and I couldn't unhear
Same
it.
thing when I did a lot of
Um,
recordings of Philharmonic orchestras and what have you, and with the binaural, you can never tell where the soloist is, the violin or even the piano or whatever. Okay, with the VR15, that piano is solidly in front of you, or if it's a vocal soloist, it's solidly in front of you, exactly where it's supposed to be. So we were able to solve that problem, and actually we we solved it by taking the sensors
Uh,
out of the
Nitha,
ears.
yeah, there you go. And before we even get into that, before you actually start talking about, how you're placing the microphones, I'm going to take my microphones off for just a second and show you what they are. So they're really stealth. You can't even really see them. If anything, it might look like I've got a pair of earbuds that didn't quite make it to my ears. This is what these things look like. It's just two little, and it's really cool because they've got this little neat thing that just it's a little memory rubber that you just mount that wraps right around your ears, so they're super comfortable. You actually even forget that they're there. Sorry if there were if there was some noise there. I should
No,
have muted myself maybe.
but
But
Chris has a lot to do with that. Tell him about it, Chris. It looks simple. How long did that take to develop
Oh,
that?
the ear hooks?
The ear hooks.
Wow. So we went through, I don't know, 20. It feels like 20 iterations of this thing.
I've still got
We
some of the very
started
first.
trying to do injection molded parts, which didn't have the flexibility, and then we went to a tube that was just a straight tube with a steel wire inside that you could literally bend around, and then finally we landed on the slapback sort of thing. Just no matter how far you flatten the hook, it always bounces back into place, and that sort of came from really Russ and I walking around and taking a piece of string and measuring the part of the ear, the part behind your earlobe, behind the cartilage, we like to call it where it screws in. Everyone had about the same diameter in that section, so it was pretty easy at that point to to figure out what length we needed that little ear hook to be.
The first
So
ones I
just-
used actually
yeah.
had they were
They're the wire.
they were wire, I think, that you just
We had the
bent
wire.
around your ear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they still sounded great, but this is such a nice little a nice little addition to that.
It's so
Um,
much lighter,
so,
yeah.
So I'll tell you the you know, there was a secret to all this. All right. So it took us quite a while to figure this out, but these are actually made in a coil, obviously. So we have a form that's the final shape and what have you, and the tubing it's straight. So the tubing gets put onto the form and what have you, and then we bake them 350 degrees for 3 minutes. But that's not all. You have to put a little drop of olive oil on there. That's the secret ingredient.
It's true, and you can't use peanut oil because
You can't
peanut
use
allergies.
peanut oil. There has to be olive oil.
We'll let the audience decide if that is the truth or if it's a joke. We'll let the audience decide.
I'm
it's
not
the
even, I'm
legend.
not even going there. So now, as opposed to the microphones being buried in the ear, Russ, this is I wanted to have a little diagram of how you put these on. They're not going in the ear, so you're not actually processing the whole ear, the whole flap here. You're not processing that as it's being recorded like you would be if it were binaural, correct?
Correct.
And what do you call this again?
What those are the pin-eye.
No. I'm sorry. There's binaural recording,
As opposed to binaural audio, we call this spatial audio.
spatial audio.
It's such a true to life representation of what you're hearing. We've decided to kind of bypass the traditional binaural and describe this as spatial audio because it really feels like you're in a new space when you hear one of these recordings.
Yeah, I find the placement is much more accurate with these, and you don't have the hole. So if you're the kind of person that, when things open back up again and you're a concert goer, folks, these things record a concert like nobody's business. Russ is a big classical fan and a member of I guess you've got season tickets. Is that correct, Russ? To the Philharmonic?
Multiple season tickets.
Multiple.
Yeah.
And so not long ago, Russ, I guess this was maybe a year or so ago, that sent me this recording. I'm trying to think what it was. It was dynamic as all get out. I can't remember the symphony that was being recorded at that point, but it was just blown away. I'm sure you've got it on. I'm sure you've got it on YouTube or whatnot. A few of the classical recordings that you did.
We have some, yeah, not too many.
Yeah, it doesn't take too many. It really doesn't take too many of these demos that you listen to before you go, you're kidding. You recorded this with a pair of $149 headphones and an iPhone. You got to be kidding me. That was my impression. I tell people these will turn you into pretty much an instant recording engineer, which here's the problem with that. These record better than some engineers record. So if you're not a particularly a great engineer, you don't really want to know about these things because they just sound so incredibly awesome. So Neetha, let's bring back the next slide and let's let these guys continue with this.
Oh, Chris, you want to explain what that is?
You're muted there, Chris.
Sorry about that. This is a bird's eye view of someone listening to a mono recording.
This is stereo. This is stereo. This is the imaging that you get from panned stereo. What do I mean by pan stereo? Well, typically the way a pop recording is made is the microphones are monaural, and each instrument is recorded monaurally onto a track. So you see there the guitar, the drum, the saxophone, vocalist, and so on. All right. then using pan pots, which change the level of the signal going to the left or the right. Uh, no, keep
Oh,
on that.
sorry.
Yeah, keep on that image. Okay. So now you're able to move that blue guitar using the pan pot. You can move that, let's say, over to the left ear. It will still be inside your head. You can take the drum or the saxophone and pan that over to the right ear. It will still be in your head. So if you listen to pop recordings on a good pair of headphones, you will notice that there's kind of a wall at your left ear and your right ear. And if there's a guitar playing on the left, it's it's almost annoying that it's tickling your left ear. Same thing.
We like to
Go ahead.
when we describe it as sort of when you pan something all the way to the left, it gets sucked into your shoulder.
Yeah,
It can't go past that. It goes left, 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 and gets sucked down into your shoulder.
that is correct. So put on a typical pop stereo recording, and you will notice that the instruments are actually inside your head. Now, some recording engineers have figured out some delay effects which will make instruments go a little outside your head. Typically, we can kind of take a guitar and maybe pan it so it seems to go in front of you. It will never go behind you, but we can sort of make it go in front of you. So a lot of these effects are used on pop recordings. But the real problem is, and the problem that we've solved, is shown in the next slide. So go ahead. Okay. In Sonic Presence, the images are outside your head. They're where they are in acoustic space, where they were originally located. Now, going back to what David said about the videos, where the point of the point of view of the picture is the same as the point of view acoustically. And these things are outside your head. It's called externalization. And there are a lot of academic people writing papers about how you actually can attain externalization. We figured out that secret, and believe it or not, with these simple little microphones that you're wearing here in front of your head, we accomplished this externalization. There are professional people, and you can hear demonstrations of this. Oh, we heard one recently with Sony, where they were using a computer to simulate the effects of the head to obtain this externalization. And they do that by using a lot of delays and filters. And the problem with filters is you can hear them. And
I've been through that demo. I know exactly what you're talking about.
You right away, if you have sensitivity to this harmonics and what have you.
Especially a lot of these filters try to emulate what that Neumann head is doing. And so they're using all these sort of nasty comb filtering to replicate what that canal, the ear canal, is doing in that old Neumann head. And so what we do is just we ignore that. We take it from the source, and the way I love to describe it to people, you don't even need to know about audio. We take the sound, and as soon as it's about to go in your ear, we stop it, and then you put the headphones on, and then it goes the rest of the way. And that's it. There's no fancy filtering to recreate the ear canal that then you have to recreate it anyways. You have to kind of reverse it. We just take the sound source, we stop it right before the ear. It's like a message in the bottle. And then when you put the headphones on, it's just like, boom, there it is. We let it finally finish its journey.
Russ had explained it to me once that really when you're dealing with binaural and the microphones are embedded in the canal, what you're really recording is you're recording the reflections off of your ear, and then it goes to the microphone. And the problem really comes in when you play it back. You are you reproduce those effects again, and so you really have like a double effect or a double ear. Once when you're recording, one when you're listening back, and that process being done twice just doesn't work. So really binaural, if you look at it, that it's been worked on for well over 100 years. They had it almost right. I mean, they've had it almost right for 100 years, which is the thing that fascinated me about this technology and meeting Russ when he explained what was actually happening physically. It just made so much sense. I'm going, these guys were this close to it, and they just stayed this close to it for decades, and really in many cases they're still there. So this technology is really something to be reckoned with, because because it works. I know we've already gone past our hour, but if you guys are okay with hanging out a little bit, I'd love to finish the conversation. Do you have a little more time?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Good, good, good. Let's Nathan, let's go ahead and bring up the next slide, and let's let these guys tell you a little bit about this, please.
okay. So this is a big deal here. Um, uh, it's it's a very simple picture of a very complex interaction. This is showing a sound wave basically hitting your head. So the sound wave is traveling from left to right in the direction of the arrow. And it's a plane wave, meaning it's a straight line. So it hits your head as a straight line. However, your head actually reflects the sound. And that curved blue line is the reflection that's bouncing back. Now, we're talking about microseconds of interaction here, millionths of a second. But your brain or your mind is, has been listening to this stuff for your entire life, and you're very sensitive to it. So this reflection of the way I've been looking for an illustration to show this in more dynamic way. But if you think about if you're standing on a bridge over a river and you're looking at the post that's going down into the water, or a dock with the post is going down into the water, that's what we're looking at here. We're looking straight down on the person's head with the wave coming along. And you think about that, if you were looking at it with a river flowing, you know that the post is going to reflect the wave back in the direction from which it came, right? I mean, the water is going to build up on that red side there, you see? So there's going to be an increase in the volume of the wave where it gets reflected back. Believe it or not, that can increase the volume by double. And what's interesting about it is that it depends upon the frequency. It depends upon the frequency of that wave. So if it's a low frequency, meaning that the wavelength is very long, it's a wave that you can barely see because you can't see the trough from the peak, right? Then there won't be much reflection. But as the wave increases in frequency, the reflection becomes greater. So I think we can go to the next slide. Yes, okay. a little difficult to see because it's kind of small here. But what happens is that the bottom scale here shows the frequency. This is the range of human hearing. And it goes from a very, very low frequency of 20 hertz, which is like the low bass. And then it goes up through the mid-range, middle C and what have you, and then it goes up beyond the musical range into what's called the harmonics. And what we've done there in the middle is we've drawn some frequency ranges of instruments. I think the top one says guitar. So that is the range of a guitar from the lowest note to the highest note. The next one I can't read. Oh yeah, the next is the male voice and the female voice, right?
That's the two bottom ones.
Yep.
Oh, those are the two bottom ones. Okay, what's the one in the middle?
Bass and saxophone.
Okay, so you've got the range of the bass. You see the guitar range is quite a bit wider than,
Sure.
But okay, so there you see the bass, and what is the other one? The
A saxophone.
Yeah, okay. So those are the ranges there. Okay, and then you see the human voice, which of course is probably most important of all. And you can see that the male voice it turns out to be an octave lower than the female voice. And the range of the female voice is a little bit wider, but basically they're right there in the middle. So middle C is kind of in the middle of that whole range of instruments there. Now, if you look at the graph that's down below, it shows this hump. It on the left, it's a little bit above the frequency line, and that starts rising up until it gets quite a bit above the line, then it flattens out. That is that effect of the head reflecting the sound back. And guess what? That is right in the range where the professional sound engineer does most of the manipulation in order to bring the sound closer to you to give it presence. And we call it the presence boost. It's a natural boost.
That's how humans hear.
That is how humans hear.
Right.
And you can hear this immediately if you make a recording with your iPhone. Everything sounds far away. It's like when I'm listening to it, I can hear David's voice, and he's right there in front of me. But when I make a recording on my iPhone, it seems like he moved 10 feet further away. Why is that? Well, it's because it's not getting this presence boost of the head. The recorder isn't recording that because it's not close enough to the head. With our microphones, it's recording it because they're right there at the ears. So we are getting this presence boost that occurs naturally.
So this is something that I find that a lot of the companies, most every company, they don't deal with. There's this company, a very, very popular company, and they've done really quite well for themselves. But in the mid-range area, they're terrible. There's this microphone company called Blue. I don't know if you're familiar with those guys or not, but these guys are making an absolute mint off of these USB microphones, and they don't sound anything like these guys do.
Yeah.
Especially in that critical mid-range area. That's so important.
It's interesting that the first one who really pointed this out was this mastering engineer, Bob Ludwig, who has done so many great pop records and what have you. The first time I played this to him, he said, "How are you getting that presence boost?" And that's when I started to look into this and started to realize what was going on, that the human head does this. And of course, you see that's right there. That boost is occurring right there in the vocal range, which of course, for thousands of years, that's the most important range of music. All music has developed around basically, the range of the voice, right?
Sure.
So it's a natural thing. Although I've never seen anybody lay it out like this.
And
No. This is brilliant.
where we really need it as humans is we need to well, it's sort of a which came first, the chicken or the egg situation. But all of our vowel sounds, the differences between the a, e, a, o, and u, all of those sounds are sort of the second and third partial, really up in that 2 to 3K range. And if you see the bottom graph, well, what's the highest point on the graph? Well, it's right at 2K. And so it's our brains and I guess our heads have tuned themselves, or the voice was created to be in tune. I'm not sure which one came first, but the way we use language and the way we use vowels are just perfectly in line with what your head is actually hearing.
Yeah, that makes all kinds of sense. Let's go to the next slide.
This is sort of
Same.
this is the holy grail. These, all of this stuff is going on simultaneously. The externalization, the bright spots, the reflections, and what have you. We're just trying to give you an idea of this is what the mind is perceiving. That's what's going on in the internal mind, this incredible computer here. And of course, with conventional recordings, you don't have these cues, and so the mind doesn't work. And that's what we're harnessing.
So I'd like to there's not any confusion here. This is an animation, sort of just to represent that things are out of your head. But let me tell you what's not happening. Okay, if you record a band with all of these instruments, it's not going to sound like quad, right? You do hear the saxophone behind you, but naturally, right? Like when a saxophone is in front of you, there are all kinds of reflections and cues that you get from the side and the back. The same way with the drums or almost anything. That's really what that's just a small study in acoustics. So don't be expecting when you're recording these things for the drums to be on the far right and the saxophone to be on the far left back of you. It all comes from the front, but this natural decay and reverberation that rooms and real recordings give you when you're actually there, that really would be more accurate than say, don't think that the drums and the saxophone is going to come behind you. That doesn't. It just sounds natural. It just sounds like you're in the room and you're really listening to it.
Yep,
my professor at school always found conventional reverb in a stereo system to be rather comical, because he does orchestral recording, and so the reverb goes the wrong way. If you're sitting if you're in this watching an orchestra perform, well, the reverberation doesn't go behind the orchestra, it goes behind the listener. It should fill the whole entire hall behind you. And so that's what we really hope to be able to recreate with a sonic recording, that even if you're in the audience and you're sitting there and all the performers are in front of you, well, all the reflections and all that beautiful warm sound of the room and the reverb, that's all where it's supposed to be, which is behind you, and it brings you into the environment and it brings you to the hall.
This is the problem that I have with most every multi-channel recording that I have ever heard. I mean, it's really kind of neat, and there's you do get stuff all around you, but almost 95% of the time, the rear channel is too loud. I do not want to hear the timpani drum behind me. That's not where they are. They're up there. What I want to hear is what the room would sound like with the timpani. Right. Yeah. I don't want to hear the timpani back here. Being up close and personal with your musician friends doesn't mean you probably want to be on stage with them. You still want this thing to be realistic. You're in front of this performance, and you're listening. Once again, go to the Sonic Presence either website or YouTube, and I'd like you guys to listen to some of the bands they recorded, and what you hear when you put on a set of headphones is really pretty close to what you would hear if you were there. The band is still solidly in front of you. You hear, where the band members are, and then the things that are coming from behind you are the things that would naturally come from behind you. Music pressurizes a room. It fills a room. There are reflections. So what you really should be hearing from a multi-channel recording, if it were real instead of just sort of gimmicky, is not a bunch of stuff back here that are instruments. You're hearing the reflection of the instruments. You're hearing the natural reverberation and decay of a real listening area. So I think something like this would be fantastic to do a surround, like an orchestra, like Russ has done so many of these things, or a band, because you do end up getting all of that surround information, but you end up getting it not like surround information, which to me is always so processed and doesn't sound real. It bothers me. That's why I'm a 2-channel guy. So I wanted to bring that out only because I've heard so many of these recordings and do realize how realistically they sound all around you. So put on a set of headphones, head over to Sonic Presence, and be prepared to be totally amazed. I know I was, and like I say, I'm not amazed with much of anything at all. Let's go ahead. I know we're running. I've kept you guys so long, so I wanted to bring this in, Russ, only because dynamic range is crazy important to me, and I think it is to most anyone that actually sits down and actively listens to recordings. What do you think? Sorry, Russ. I'm sorry. You were echoing, so I put you on mute. I got you now.
Oh,
There you go.
okay. So, we have in the device, in the interface to the phone or to the computer and what have you, we have the A to D conversion, the USB conversion, and what have you. And of course, there's always a question of what sort of dynamic range do you get. We typically get a full 18 bits of dynamic range, and sometimes as much as 20 bits of dynamic range. So we're talking about dynamic ranges here of over 100 dB, sometimes as much as 120 dB. You couldn't play this in your home living room.
Oh yeah, not the volume. It's same way. Like I say, I've got these drums back here, and you even having a cardioid this small, you're going. There's no. When I first put them up, I'm thinking, this is not gonna work. But no matter how hard I played or how soft I played, and to me, the soft is just as important as the hard. It captured everything like I hit it.
And so you'll hear Russ saying that we're getting 18 bits of dynamic range, which especially I know Qobuz fans will be very familiar with 24-bit. And so what we mean by that, and we tested a lot of, I don't want to say any specific brands, but we tested many different A to D converters and a whole bunch of different audio interfaces to see how many bits you can really get out of a device like that. And
that's interesting.
And so, because there's electronics noise floor, there's a whole bunch of different things. So we recorded essentially no microphone in, just a cable or no cable at all, to see how many bits of just clear, clean audio we could get out of a bunch of high-end converters. And basically, even on expensive items, high-end home studio items into real studio converters, we were getting between 17, 18 bits basically on anything across the board. So then in the final mix, you may use all these different recordings to have a 24-bit full file, but the actual bits coming in, 18, 19 bits is really where you can max out. And the Sonic Presence A to D is right at that top tier level. And so that's what we mean when we say 18 bits here. It's not the file type or anything like that. That's the real pure digital audio signal that we're getting in our recordings. And that's a test with a Philharmonic orchestral recording. We're getting full 18 bits. That's not even in a anechoic chamber or something of that sort.
Yeah.
Very interesting. That's a great explanation, Mike. So Nitha, can you go to the next slide, please? This is something I'm super excited about because Russ and I had been talking about this for maybe a year and a half. I'm going, Russ, the stereo mics are so cool, but why don't you make something that, like normal humans could use, like in a Zoom conference where a teacher could use, that wouldn't be much trouble for them. And so, looks like you guys are this is on the the roadmap, right, guys?
This is in prototype right now, including a digital Bluetooth link, so that you can walk around.
And I hope that I've been sounding good this whole conference, this whole time, because actually currently right now I'm using one of the prototype Sonic lavalier microphones. So if anyone's interested who's watching, please let us know. We're really trying to get some feedback on the need for the lavalier mic. We think people are going to really love it, especially in this distance learning and conferenced work from home world that we're living in.
I could not agree more. I think a lot of people that are just like me, the wire really for what I'm doing works just fine because I'm sitting down doing a live stream. I'm not really walking around, but I could see, like, my wife is a teacher and she's been doing classes virtually over this last period that we've been in the pandemic, and she sounds terrible. I mean, just terrible. I was thinking, oh, honey, this is so. So last time, I don't know, we were talking a few weeks ago. I was talking to Russ, and I was telling Russ, that my wife sounds just full, and he goes, well, she really ought to be using a pair of the SP15s. I really didn't even think much more about it. And then like 3 days later, this package came, and my wife came in. She said, you received a package. And I said, oh, okay, well, what is it? I opened it up. You got the little note from Russ saying, this is for your wife for when she's teaching. That was so. By the way, Russ, Christy is very, very appreciative, and she said, please make sure you tell them thank you so much. That was in her words. She's a Tennessee girl. She goes, that was just so sweet. So thank you guys. That was really nice. And I got to tell you, everybody I've turned on to these things have called me up thanking me. There's one guy in particular. His name's Sterling Trail. Sounds like a movie star, doesn't it? He's one of the neatest guys ever. He is one of the best setup people I have ever met in my life. People pay this guy thousands of bucks to fly to like Milan and set up their Wilson or Sonus Faber speakers or VPI turntable. Or, I mean, he's that good. When Sterling goes to your house, your system is going to be working to a T. Well, about a year ago, Russ sent Sterling a pair of these things, and he said, David, I use this tool all the time. When I set up a system, I can record it, and you can actually hear what the system sounds like. So that's a really, really huge endorsement from somebody that doesn't even know you guys. So I got to tell you, I'm wishing you guys the very, very best. This is a product that I thought the Qobuz music lovers would like to know about, because when we can start recording music again, let's do it. Or if you're a musician like Chris literally takes a pair of headphone ear mics and records tracks off of his guitar amplifier, and then throws those into like a DAW. I'm not sure what are you using, Pro Tools or something like that, or?
I'm less of the DAW, but just GarageBand or Logic.
Yeah, well,
I usually send them to a different bandmate to do the mixing portion. But yeah, I play acoustic guitar and I wear them, and just the sound of it from my perspective, is just stunning. It's totally amazing, because that's what I'm hearing while I play, and just to hear it back on headphones, exactly how I heard it while I was playing it. It's like this new sort of perspective on just listening to music.
Oh, I'm gonna try it.
From the musician's perspective.
I don't know if you can see it right over here.
Give it a shot. It's really shocking. It sounds great.
The
So,
guitar just over my right shoulder is from my aunt. She bought this at brand new in 1960. It's a
Wow.
Gibson J45.
Wow.
Mhm.
And
There you
so
go.
I haven't recorded the acoustic yet, but I'm gonna
Give
do
it a
that.
shot.
Yeah.
Give it a shot.
So my battery is gonna die here.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask you guys if there was
it's-
anything that you wanted to.
Yeah,
Is there anything
it's-
that you'd like to finish off with that we didn't get a chance to say?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, David.
You've been
And,
such
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Qobuz, and that was so
Thank
much
you
fun.
guys for being with us. It's always a lot of fun talking to you, and I'm sure that just like always, we can't go more than 3 or 4 weeks without picking up the phone and saying hi. So, and I always enjoy it. So, Russ, Mr. Einstein, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you and the wisdom and knowledge you bring to the table. And Mike, you are just an awesome dude. A lot of fun to listen to. Mike does a lot of the commercials for these guys, little ads and stuff, and he just does a great job. Chris, without your technical input and in marketing, I don't know what would be going on. But if we can help you in any way at Qobuz, we'd be glad to. We appreciate you guys and just wish you the very best.
Thank
That
you.
means a lot. Thanks, David.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
David.
Take care.
All right.